We have had an update, by the way. Do you remember back in November, Harry and Meghan were pictured going to a party in Montecito with Kim Kardashian and a bunch of celebrities. And at the time, I think Harry was wearing a poppy. It was just before Remembrance Day. And there was a bit of debate as to whether that picture should have been released, who released it, because within hours, it was then taken down. Kim Kardashian has... Have you seen this, by the way? Have you seen,
yes.
Kim Kardashian has come out on a podcast and put the record straight. And I think it looks a little bit embarrassing for Harry and Meghan. I'll just read you what she said. She said, basically, we were given permission, we were in communication with the Sussexes, we put it out. It was totally cool to post. And then after it was posted, I think they realised it was Remembrance Day and they didn't want to be seen at a party, even though it's already up. And then I think they realised, like, oh, this was so silly. They seem to have fallen out with the Kardashians about this now.
I know. Do you fall out with the Kardashians?
It depends. When either side needs you again, you'll probably get brought back in. This was very interesting because the Kardashian PR machine is sort of palace level in terms of its slickness. This felt a lot like, and the words were very soft, and she said, oh, Meghan has such a sweet relationship with my mum, obviously Kris Jenner. But she kind of threw them under the bus in a big way here, and they don't really have a right of reply because how are they going to get involved in this in terms of a back and forth? It would begin to look like a conflict. So the way that she said it, and she also pointed out that she thought they should have just lent in when all the noise got really loud around the pictures. So she's also sort of slightly rebuked their reaction to it. I feel like it was very embarrassing for Harry and Meghan to have the story put out there by Kim, who was the person who deleted the pictures. So, we're going straight to the source. There was a lot of speculation at the time about what had happened, but now we know directly that they did go away from that party and think, ooh, maybe that wasn't a great idea. And I do think they got thrown under the bus.
It's more than embarrassment. It's a disaster for the Sussexes PR team, no?
I just think it's slightly idiotic to think that a picture can appear on the Kardashians' socials and disappear without anybody commenting on it or reporting on it
immediately.
I just think they should have gone with it, shouldn't they? They just should have left those pictures out there, owned it. Look, they want to be part of that. Well, certainly Meghan, it seems, wants to be part of that kind of Hollywood circle, but also the idea that it would just disappear. I just think they in a way made it into more of a story. They've now made it into a them against the Kardashians. And so I don't see how anyone's a winner from that. And actually, in some ways, they made it a report about, oh gosh, it was around Remembrance. Would we necessarily have reported about it in that way? I'm not sure.
We necessarily discussed a little bit months on. Think about, we are months on, well, a couple of months on, and now it is, again, a big story because of that. They made it one. I do think that was a PR disaster.
But then you've got Harry's links, of course, with veterans and how close to his heart the whole idea of Remembrance is. So I kind of get that, but I just think they made it into more of a story than it needed to by saying, get shot of those pictures.
They bring drama.
Yeah.
Wherever they go, even, when they're in the UK, when they're, doing talks or speeches or documentaries or turning up at a party, they can't even turn up to a party without creating drama with the Kardashians. That's where we are.
I think we've talked about this a few times in so many different ways regarding the Sussexes, but at its core, you just get this sense that they don't know who they are or who they want to be in the public eye. And this is that again. They go to this incredible A-list celebrity bash with all of the big names in Hollywood, big names in tech. These are the shoulders they want to be rubbing. And then the next day they sort of panic about it because they're wondering how that's playing off with their image in Britain. And it does come down to what feels like, again, an identity crisis. You sort of have to have that idea of who you want to be before you step out confidently on the world stage. But it always feels like they're scrambling.
Now, I want to talk about soft power. So this is a phrase that we use when we talk about the royal family and their diplomacy and their skills and their meeting other world leaders. King Charles, privately, diplomatically, behind the scenes, got a message to Donald Trump to say that whether inadvertently or not, the comments that he made about NATO soldiers and British soldiers being very far behind the front lines in places like Afghanistan, when the NATO article was invoked and we went to support the United States, that it hurt people in the UK. And then Donald Trump has railed back. This is the front page of the story on The Sun on Sunday. We talk about Charles being a meddling king or being political. How does this sit with you, his intervention here?
I find all of this really fascinating because we don't really get told about this stuff. We don't get let in on the private conversations that are going on all the time. We know that there's always conversations between the King's private secretary, the Prime Minister's private secretary, and the Cabinet Secretary. They're kind of described as this powerful triangle of men, but we don't really know who they are very well, and we don't know what they talk about. But this whole story saying, actually, the Prime Minister called up Donald Trump and went, "Oh, I think you've upset the King." And immediately we then get that post on Truth Social from Trump saying, "Oh no, we're all friends. We'll never forget that bond with our British troops." I just think it shows the level of influence that the King has, generally on the world stage, but particularly when it comes to Donald Trump. I think he's probably the King is probably one of the only people that Trump publicly has not thrown under the bus. Yeah. He can say nothing but good things about King Charles. And so the idea that he would have upset his friend obviously went a long way in that moment.
And what's more than that is that normally, as you say, these conversations are normally private. Or they don't get leaked, and they're very bad if they get leaked. We don't know the specifics of the conversation. We just know that the King made it aware that Britain was a little bit hurt by it. It's the fact that there was no kickback from the palace.
No.
There was no anger from the White House or anything like that. It was almost like, we don't mind this message getting out, because it makes the King look like he's standing up for the United Kingdom. It's
statesman behaviour. As the Commander-in-Chief as well, it felt like the appropriate thing to do, but he did it, as you say, it's the wielding of that soft power. There was so much, conjecture about, what does that look like during the state visit? He has soft power and the diplomacy and they're friends, but how does that actually play out on the world stage? Well, here we are. We're seeing it right now. A wonderful example of it when, Donald Trump receives pressure from other world leaders and if anything, usually rails back at them. So in this case, as you say, the dust appears to have settled and with no conflict, which is unusual with the US administration often. So I think that it's a case of, I think the King is really meeting the moment, and to the climate change conversation as well. Yes, we can't imagine the late Queen or people before her, behaving or acting in this way. But at the same time, I think that, as William is always saying, we're deciding whether the monarchy is fit for purpose in the modern era. And I think that the senior royals are meeting the moment. And we're not in that deferential period anymore. People want to see what the King can do and what that soft power looks like. And I think he's wielding, he took a huge risk, because we don't ever know how President Trump is going to respond, and they are friends, but you can never say with certainty that he's not going to get angry and fire off some notes on Truth Social. You're never sure of it. So it was absolutely a risk. It could have been a diplomatic nightmare, really. But I think it was a calculated risk off the back of whatever conversations they'd had in September. And since then, perhaps, maybe they speak on the phone more often than we know. But this was a great example of the King using that power and really showing off what that friendship is worth and his value as well as the monarch.
I mean, it means that the April state visit, which we're expecting to happen, hasn't been announced when the King and Queen go to Washington. It means perhaps that there will be less conflict or less stress between the people organising it, because, as you say, you don't know what Trump's going to fire out on Truth Social next month or next week or even in a couple of hours' time. So the palace will be worried, but now they know that they kind of have a good relationship between Charles and Trump, and the state visit probably go ahead safely.